If you're hearing this, I need you to listen carefully. I'm not telling this story for entertainment. I'm telling it because I made a mistake that I can't undo, and the people who hired me are still out there pretending that house is empty. It isn't. It never was. And if you ever see a job posting that sounds like what I'm about to describe, watching a house where no one lives, you need to walk away immediately. I didn't. And something followed me out of that place. Something that still knows where I sleep. I keep my windows covered now. I don't stay in one place for more than a few nights. I've stopped answering unknown numbers because the same voice keeps calling from different phones, asking if I'm still on shift. They say it like I never left. Like I'm still sitting in that chair by the front window, staring at a driveway that never stayed empty as long as it should have. I haven't slept properly since. Every time I start to drift off, I hear footsteps on hardwood behind me. Slow, patient, like someone pacing a room they've been trapped in for years. I don't turn around anymore. I learned what happens when you turn around. I'm recording this because the contract said I couldn't talk about the job. It said there would be consequences. They were right. But the consequences came anyway, even after I finished the job exactly how they asked. Something irreversible happened in that house. I lost pieces of myself in ways I can't explain to doctors or therapists without sounding insane. And the worst part is, I still don't know who I was protecting that house from, or who I was protecting it for. If you recognize any details from what I'm about to tell you, if you've seen a listing offering easy money to sit in an empty property for insurance reasons, don't accept it. Don't even reply. Because once you step inside, you don't just watch the house. The house starts watching you back. I found the job on a local contractor board in Denver. I was desperate for money. My last construction job had dried up. My landlord was threatening eviction, and I'd been picking up random digs just to stay afloat. The listing was simple. Property monitor needed. Temporary overnight position. Quiet environment, good pay. No company name, just a phone number. I called. A man with a flat, almost bored voice answered. He didn't introduce himself. He just asked if I had a clean record and if I could stay awake overnight. I told him yes to both. He said the house belonged to a client who traveled frequently and needed someone present to deter vandalism and squatters. No visitors allowed. No leaving the property during shifts. Cameras would be active for insurance purposes. The pay was insane. $3,000 for 5 nights. I should have known something was off, but I needed the money. They sent me an address in a quiet suburb outside Boulder. The neighborhood looked normal. Big trees, wide driveways, families walking dogs. The house itself was older. 2 stories with faded white siding and a wraparound porch. Not abandoned, not run down. Just quiet in a way that felt intentional, like it was holding its breath. The man met me outside the first night. Late 40s, thin, wearing a windbreaker even though it wasn't cold. He handed me a key and a printed list of rules. Stay inside after 8 p.m. Keep all doors locked. Do not enter the basement. Report any unusual activity by text only. If you hear knocking from inside the house, ignore it. He didn't laugh back. Inside, the house looked lived in but frozen in time. Furniture covered with sheets. Family photos turned face down on tables. The fridge was empty except for bottled water. They'd set up a folding chair by the front window with a clipboard for logging activity. I was supposed to sit there, watch the street, and write down anything that seemed off. My first night was boring. A few cars passed. A dog barked somewhere down the block. Around midnight I heard what sounded like pipes knocking in the walls. Old house noises. I logged it and moved on. Second night I started noticing small things. The chair in the dining room wasn't where I remembered leaving it. A hallway light that I swore I turned off was on when I came back from the bathroom. I told myself I was just tired. The third night the house started feeling occupied. Not haunted. Not anything dramatic like that. Just the sense that someone else was moving around when I wasn't looking directly at them. Floorboards creaked in rooms I hadn't entered. The air felt warmer in certain corners, like someone had been standing there recently. I texted the contact number to ask if anyone else had access. The reply came back instantly. You are alone. Continue monitoring. That was when I started checking the locks every hour. Around 2 a.m., while sitting in the front chair, I heard a faint knock. 3 taps, soft, coming from somewhere deeper in the house. I froze. Then I remembered the rule. If you hear knocking from inside the house, ignore it. So I sat there, staring at the dark hallway, pretending it was just the pipes again. The knocking stopped after a few minutes. 4th night, I started keeping all the lights on. The silence felt heavier, thicker. Every sound carried farther than it should have. My footsteps echoing down empty halls. The hum of the refrigerator vibrating through the floor. I noticed something else that bothered me more than anything. The security cameras. Small black domes in the corners of most rooms. I'd assumed they were connected to an external system. But the little red recording lights would blink on and off randomly, sometimes pointing toward me, even when I hadn't moved. I covered one with a piece of tape. Within 5 minutes, my phone buzzed. Do not obstruct cameras. No greeting, no explanation. That night around 1 a.m. I heard footsteps upstairs. Slow, even walking from one end of the hall to the other. I grabbed a flashlight and climbed halfway up the stairs before stopping. The rule about the basement echoed in my head. Do not enter. They'd never said anything about upstairs, but something in my gut told me to stay where I was. The footsteps stopped the moment I reached the landing. Silence. I went back down and sat in the chair, trying to convince myself it was just the house settling. But my hands were shaking so badly I could barely write in the log. On the 5th night, the last scheduled shift, I found a new entry on the clipboard, written in handwriting that wasn't mine. 2:13 a.m., movement in hallway. I'd left the clipboard blank before my shift. I knew I had. That was the moment I realized something else had been in the house, and it wasn't leaving logs for the people who hired me. By the 5th night, I wasn't sleeping at all between shifts. Every time I closed my eyes, I'd replay the sounds. Footsteps overhead, soft knocking, doors shifting on their hinges. I started drinking energy drinks non-stop just to stay focused. My nerves were shot. Around midnight, I heard the knocking again. 3 taps. Pause. 3 taps. This time it came from the hallway closet near the stairs. I could see the door from where I sat. It didn't move, but the sound was unmistakable, like knuckles against wood from the inside. I texted the number, hearing knocking again. Closet by stairs. The response came slower than usual. Do not investigate. Remain in position. The knocking stopped. But 10 minutes later, the hallway light flickered on by itself. I didn't get up. I just watched. And then the closet door opened a few inches. No sound, no visible hand. Just a slow, steady movement until the gap was wide enough to see darkness inside. My chest tightened. I told myself it was bad hinges. Anything logical. Then something shifted behind the door. Not stepping out, just moving deeper in the dark. Enough to prove the space wasn't empty. I couldn't breathe. I grabbed my phone, debating whether to call the police, when another text came in. Remain calm. Do not leave your station. That was when I realized they already knew what was happening inside the house, and they weren't surprised. I sat there for hours, staring at that open closet door, waiting for whatever was inside to come out. It never did, but the footsteps upstairs started again, slower this time, heavier, like someone learning how to walk in shoes that didn't fit. And that was just the beginning of what that house was about to do to me. And that was just the beginning of what that house was about to do to me. The footsteps upstairs didn't stop for almost an hour, back and forth across the hallway, slow, methodical. I kept my eyes on the staircase, expecting someone to come down at any moment. No one did. Around 2 a.m., my phone buzzed again. Same number. Log all activity. Do not move unless necessary. That was the first time I realized they weren't just giving instructions. They were watching everything in real time. Every time I shifted in my chair, the cameras would twitch slightly to follow me. When I rubbed my eyes or stood up to stretch, my phone would buzz within seconds telling me to remain alert. I started feeling less like a guard and more like part of the experiment. The knocking changed that night too. It stopped coming from the closet and started coming from the walls. 3 taps behind me, then 3 taps from the kitchen, then faint tapping near the ceiling, like someone crawling above the drywall. I walked the house once with a flashlight, keeping my back against the wall the whole time. Nothing moved. Every room looked exactly the same as when I'd arrived. Sheets over furniture, dust on windowsills, photos turned face down. Except one. A framed picture on a hallway table had been turned upright. A family photo. A man, a woman, and a teenage boy standing in front of the house years earlier. All of them smiling in that stiff, forced way people do when they don't know each other well enough to look comfortable. I didn't remember seeing that photo before. I turned it back down and returned to the front chair. My hands wouldn't stop shaking. Somewhere around 3 a.m., the house went completely silent. No footsteps, no knocking. Even the hum of the refrigerator faded until the place felt vacuum sealed. My ears rang from the quiet. That's when my phone vibrated again. If you enjoy the stories here, remember to subscribe to Nightmare Crypt and keep listening. It came from an unknown sender. No context, no explanation, just that. I felt a surge of anger more than fear. Whoever was running this job wasn't just watching, they were messing with me, treating me like part of a show. I typed back, "Who else is in this house?" No response. Then the footsteps started again, but this time they weren't upstairs. They were behind me. Slow, barely audible, moving from the kitchen toward the front room. I didn't turn around right away. I just watched my reflection in the dark window, waiting to see another shape appear behind my shoulders. Nothing showed up. The footsteps stopped 3 feet from my chair. I felt air move against the back of my neck. Warm human breath. Close enough that I could hear it shift when I swallowed. But the contract said not to leave the house, and some part of me was still clinging to the idea that this was a test. Maybe another guard trying to scare me. I forced myself to turn around. The room was empty. No one stood behind me. No shadows out of place. No open doors. Just the quiet hum of electronics and my own ragged breathing. I texted the contact again. "Someone is inside." I felt them behind me. The reply came instantly. "You are alone. Continue monitoring." That was when paranoia started creeping in hard. My thoughts got slow and jagged from lack of sleep. I kept replaying the same sounds in my head, second-guessing every memory. I started talking out loud just to hear a human voice, even if it was only mine. The 6th night wasn't part of the original schedule, but they offered me an extra $1,000 to stay one more night. I should have walked out and never looked back, but I needed the money, and I wanted answers. When I arrived that evening, the front door was already unlocked. The lights inside were on, every single one of them, even rooms I'd never entered before. And the clipboard on the chair had new entries written in that same unfamiliar handwriting. 1:07 a.m., guard unresponsive. 1:42 a.m., guard did not follow instructions. 2:03 a.m., guard looked directly at hallway. I was the only guard they'd hired. At least, I thought I was. That night, the sounds didn't wait until midnight. They started the moment the sun went down. Doors clicking shut on their own, water running somewhere upstairs even though the plumbing had been dry all week. The basement door rattling faintly like someone was pushing against it from the other side. But the longer I stayed awake, the more the house felt like it was adjusting to me, learning my routines, my reactions. Around 11 p.m., the cameras all rotated at once. Every lens slowly turned until they were pointed directly at me. Not the doors, not the windows, just me. My phone buzzed. Remain seated, observe. Then the knocking started again, this time from the basement door. 3 taps, pause, 3 taps. I stared at the handle as it vibrated slightly with each knock. The rule echoed in my head. The knocking got louder, faster, more frantic. Like whoever was down there knew I was watching and wanted me to break the rule. I lasted maybe 5 minutes before my nerves snapped. I stood up, grabbed my flashlight, and walked toward the basement door. That decision was the point where everything stopped feeling manageable and started spiraling completely out of control. The basement door was cold under my hand, colder than the rest of the house, like it had been sitting outside in winter air. The knocking stopped the moment my fingers touched the handle. Silence. I stood there listening to my own heartbeat. Every instinct screamed at me to go back to the chair, but something stronger pulled me forward, curiosity mixed with exhaustion and anger. I needed to know who else was inside. I turned the handle. The door creaked open just enough to reveal a narrow staircase descending into darkness. The smell hit me first, stale air mixed with something metallic and old. Not rot, not mold, just unused space. I stepped down one stair. My phone buzzed violently in my pocket. Do not enter the basement. Return to your position. For a second I almost listened, but then I heard breathing from below, slow, uneven, like someone trying to stay quiet while listening to me above. That was my panic moment. Adrenaline hit hard. I rushed down the stairs with the flashlight shaking in my hand, calling out, "Hello? Who's down here?" The beam of light revealed a large open basement. Concrete floor, exposed beams, a folding table covered in monitors and recording equipment, all live feeds from the cameras upstairs. Multiple chairs arranged in a semicircle facing the screens. Someone had been watching me from inside the house the entire time. The chairs were empty when I reached the bottom, still warm when I touched them. That was the moment dread locked my body in place. I realized whoever had been down there had left seconds before I came in. Maybe while I was on the stairs, close enough to hear every word I'd said. My phone kept buzzing non-stop, message after message. Return upstairs immediately. You are breaking protocol. Return to position. I turned in a slow circle, sweeping the flashlight across the walls. No windows. One small door in the corner, slightly ajar. I walked toward it without thinking. Inside was a tiny room with a single chair facing a mirror, cameras mounted in every corner. The mirror wasn't reflective from my side, just dark glass. Behind me, footsteps sounded at the top of the basement stairs. Heavy, slow, deliberate. I spun around and pointed the flashlight upward. A silhouette stood at the doorway. A man's shape, broad shoulders, face hidden by shadow. I shouted, "Who are you? Why are you watching me?" He didn't answer. He just stepped down one stair, then another. My chest tightened with a new realization. I wasn't the guard anymore. I was the subject. I ran for the stairs, pushing past him before he reached the bottom. His hand brushed my shoulder, warm and firm, but he didn't try to stop me. He just watched as I climbed back into the main floor, gasping for air. When I reached the front room, every camera lens was pointed at the staircase, waiting. And that was when I finally understood the house wasn't empty because no one lived there. It was empty because everyone inside was there for one reason only, to watch the guard slowly break. And once I understood that, nothing in that house felt random anymore. I slammed the basement door shut behind me and dragged the chair in front of it. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely hold my phone. Messages were still flooding in, commands, warnings, threats disguised as instructions. Return to position. Remain calm. You are being monitored. I spun in circles trying to figure out where the man had gone. There were only two exits, the front door and the back hallway, and both were visible from where I stood. No footsteps. Just the cameras quietly tracking my panic. That was the moment I realized I had lost control of everything. I wasn't being paid to watch the house. The house was watching me, and the people behind it were documenting every reaction like data. The lights flickered once, then again, then the entire house went dark. I froze. My breathing sounded too loud, too close. I turned on my phone flashlight and slowly swept it across the room. Furniture covered in sheets, dust hanging in the beam like floating ash. The basement door vibrating slightly behind the chair. A sound came from upstairs, slow footsteps moving across the hallway again. But this time, there was more than one set. 3, maybe 4 people walking in uneven rhythm. I backed toward the front door and grabbed the handle. Locked. I tried my keys. Nothing worked. The deadbolt had been turned from the outside. That was the loss of control moment. The realization that I wasn't allowed to leave, not until they decided I was finished. The footsteps spread through the house, one moving in the kitchen, another in the upstairs bedroom, one directly above me on the ceiling, pacing back and forth like someone trying to memorize my position. I shouted, "I'm done, I'm leaving. Open the door." No response. The knocking started again, but not from the basement this time. It came from inside the walls, rapid tapping moving along the hallway like someone crawling through the structure itself. My phone buzzed with a new message. Phase 3 has begun. Continue observation. My vision tunneled. I felt dizzy from lack of sleep and adrenaline. I grabbed a chair leg and smashed one of the cameras above the door. The lens shattered, sparks popping as it went dark. Every other camera immediately rotated toward me. The footsteps stopped. Quiet. Breathless. Close enough that I could hear the echo bounce down the stairwell. I ran. That was the pure panic moment. I bolted through the hallway, checking every room, looking for anyone, anything, human I could confront. Doors slammed behind me as I passed. Lights flicked on and off. Water started running full blast in the bathroom sink. In the upstairs bedroom, the sheets on the bed were pulled tight like someone had just gotten up seconds earlier. The air smelled warm, occupied. I turned toward the closet and heard breathing from inside, slow and uneven. I ripped the door open, empty, but the carpet inside was compressed, like someone had been standing there moments before. I stumbled backward, heart hammering, and heard the front door unlock downstairs with a loud metallic click. For a second I thought they were finally letting me leave. I ran toward the staircase and froze halfway down. 3 people stood in the front room, all wearing plain black clothing. No masks, just neutral expressions, watching me like I was an animal that had finally done something interesting. One of them held a clipboard. Another had a handheld camera pointed directly at my face. "Who are you?" I yelled. No answer. The man with the camera stepped closer. My legs felt weak, slow from exhaustion. The one with the clipboard said calmly, "Continue as you were." That was when the paralyzing dread hit hardest. The realization that to them this wasn't cruelty or fear. It was a procedure, a job, something routine. I shouted that I was leaving again and tried to push past them toward the door. The man with the camera grabbed my arm, not violently, just firmly enough to stop me. "You signed a contract," he said. I don't remember deciding to swing at him. I just remember my fist connecting with his jaw and the camera hitting the floor. Everything exploded into movement. Hands grabbing my shoulders, voices rising, someone shouting into a radio. I broke free long enough to reach the front door. I yanked it open and stumbled into the cold night air. I thought I was finally out. Then I saw the van parked across the street. 2 more people sitting inside watching me through the windshield. And that was when everything snapped into focus. The neighbors' empty houses, the lack of traffic, the silent street. The entire block had been cleared for this. One of the men from inside stepped out onto the porch behind me and said calmly, "You need to finish the observation period." I ran anyway, barefoot, disoriented, half blind from exhaustion. I made it 3 houses down before my legs gave out, and I collapsed on the sidewalk. I remember someone lifting me under the arms, someone else saying, "He's past threshold." The next thing I remember was waking up in my own apartment 2 days later. No explanation, no payment beyond the initial deposit. My phone wiped clean, no messages, no contact number. Nothing linking me to the house. But the footage wasn't gone. 2 nights after I got home, an unmarked package arrived. Inside was a flash drive, no return address. I plugged it into my computer. Hours of recordings, me sitting in the chair, reacting to sounds, losing sleep, pacing the house. Footage from cameras I didn't even know existed. Close-ups of my face during panic attacks. Audio of me talking to myself in the dark. And one final video labeled, Phase 3 completed. It showed me standing at the top of the basement stairs, while 3 observers sat below watching silently from the folding chairs. They had been there long before I ever broke the rule. The last clip on the drive was recorded after I left the house, Footage from a camera mounted inside the van across the street. It showed me collapsing on the sidewalk while someone spoke behind the lens. Subject demonstrated expected degradation. Recommend reuse protocol. Then another voice asked, "Do we contact him again?" A pause. Eventually, not the fear, not the house. The realization that I wasn't a victim of a single event. I was a data point in an ongoing system, something they could repeat whenever they wanted. And 3 nights ago, I got another message from an unknown number. New assignment available, same location, higher compensation. I'm telling this now because the house is still listed online. Different name, same photos, same empty promises about simple overnight monitoring. I know they're recruiting again. I still wake up at 3 a.m., hearing footsteps in my apartment. Slow pacing in the hallway, even though I live alone. My phone screen lights up sometimes with messages that disappear before I can read them. And every time I walk past a mirror, I catch myself checking behind my shoulder, expecting to see a camera lens following me. I never signed up for another job. But last night someone slid a new contract under my door while I was sleeping. No address, no name, just one line printed at the top. Observation period begins soon. If you ever see a job listing asking you to watch a house where no one lives, don't take it. Don't answer their calls. And if you start hearing footsteps in empty rooms, leave before they decide you're ready for phase 3. Because once they start watching you, they don't stop.